Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffat as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas, sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffat.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffat. I'm in Burrowang in New South Wales in Australia. It's just gone 9:20 Monday morning. Gives me great pleasure to welcome to the studio all the way across the other side of the world in just outside of Chicago, Illinois. I've got Shameika Henderson, where it is 6:20 Sunday night. Shameika, welcome to the studio. Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's great to connect. And you asked me, you said, how did I find you? And I find people who look interesting and look like they have a good subject in dentistry to talk about. Most of them I find, on social media, on LinkedIn, and I don't really consider LinkedIn social media. It's more business media. But that's where you appeared to me. And I thought, this lady's got a good story about what she does in dentistry, and she's also got a good mission about what she's doing in dentistry. So I wanted to tell your story, or have you tell your story to my listeners and followers. So tell me, we were chatting briefly before we hit the record button. Tell me about how you got into dentistry and then what you've done since you've been in dentistry.
Absolutely. So I started in 2014. The way I got in was just through a friend who worked as the front desk through a large DSO. And at the time I was working nonprofit at United Way. And she's like, you would be so good for what I do. And I'm like, well, what do you do? So I just knew she worked front desk in a dental office. She's like, gosh, Shameika, it's so much more than that. You should apply. So I applied, and there were 3 different interviews, but just from the interviews, just regarding, I liked how it wasn't just front desk because it was a major DSO. They had systems in place. And so these interviews were like, you'll be a business associate. You'll do X, Y, Z. You'll have $1 million practice at the palm of your hands. And so that excited me. So that's where I started my journey and worked for them up until about 2018 and loved what I learned, but the structure, the feel of corporate just wasn't for me. The revolving door of doctors and team members. And once my strength is team or people development and relationships. I'm a very relationships driven person. So I grew to management really fast, but it was hard to retain in that environment. So off I set on a mission to try and help private dentists whom I would say, ignorant in the fact that they, not every practice ran the way that this large DSO did. So when I met my first private doctor and seeing how everything was everywhere, and I'm like, no. And then so piece by piece, we helped him. Things like claims were being sent, but no one followed up on their aging reports, or no one checked the claim error reports. And there were like over $40,000 and over 90. And I'm just like, what is happening here? And so, but I worked with that doctor for a year, supported him with his collections and a little bit of team development. But I learned, though, that there was so much more that I needed to learn when it came to helping private doctors. And so then I went back to another DSO, continued to grow. And then in 2021, found myself, with a previous colleague who I worked with in corporate, they were on a mission to support dentists transition out of their practice and either create a DSO, like create their own dental partnership organization, I would say, or sell to larger DSOs, but we were kind of the support with the practices to help them increase their EBITDA. so that they would get the most, for their value in the sale. And did that for about 3 years. And that was amazing. I learned so much there in supporting doctors increase their EBITDA. At times we would have 30 clients, 30 doctors at a time. It was a lot. It was a whirlwind. Probably, I swear, I probably blocked out half of it because everything happened so fast. But it was successful, and 2 platforms were created. And then 2024, when the company dissolved, I started to coach on my own more comprehensively. But still, though I have the skills to support dentists transition out, my I would say my focus is on team development and helping doctors understand the importance of honing in on roles that increase the bottom line of the practice. So someone for schedule, produce, and collect in your practice, and also developing the clinical team as well, making sure there's growth paths everywhere and ownership in every role, and everyone understands what success looks like in every role.
Yeah, I love you've summarized that so well, and there's so much to unpack there in what you said, because in private practice and as a result of poor dental schooling, that's really what it is. Dentists come out and they have a degree in how to fix teeth, but they don't have a degree in business or people skills, or, as you said, team relationships, and they don't even. I didn't know what EBITDA was for about 20 years in dental practice, and so you need to know that. You can't run a business, you can't run a life on the philosophy that, as long as we're making money, there's got to be a bit of profit here somewhere. You've got to, that's just scary stuff. But a lot of dentists do that, and you would know this, that there would be dentists who I think in the US is it 4 months afterwards, at the end of the financial year and then there's 4 months, and then you've got to lodge your return. So it's kind of like 4 and 12 is 6. It's 16 months. You don't really know how you went in January of the year before until you've lodged your return, and that's crazy.
It is.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. And so profit is important, but profit is hard to generate, as you've just said. And I'm going to get you to unpack it, because you've got so much experience in big corporates and then smaller businesses and helping smaller businesses become that. Profit without the team being on board and the team being able to grow and having the right team or the right people
in the seat
is really, really hard. I see it all the time. People are employed because they have skills, but in their brain, they're not drinking the Kool-Aid. They're not singing from the same hymn, and that is really hard. Even in a small business of 5 or 6 people, it's hard. If somebody's not, if you're in a rowing, Olympic rowing event, if everybody's not stroking it the same way, then you're not going to win a medal.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And so, what do you do in that sort of situation when you get called into an office and this is a great example of what I see all the time too, is that you get called in because the doctor wants to do this, but you say, hang on, you got problems here, back to here. We got to start fixing this and this and this and this and this. Then we can handle that. Isn't that the case? It's like you're trying to put all these, you've got all the wrong pieces here, and you're trying to make it work, and you've got to go back and start, and work out who has to do it. So how do you come into a practice, and because you would know, you come in and you say, that person, they're not really the good fit for what we're wanting.
Yes. Well, the first thing is I do 2 things when I go into an initial practice. Well, 3 before, you meet the doctor, to identify where he feels his hiccups are, bottlenecks, or whatever that looks like. Just like you mentioned, he's like, this needs to be fixed. So then my first question is, if they have it, because not all doctors have it, hey doc, I need to see your profit and loss report and your balance sheet. Let's look and see where you're how profitable you truly are, right? If they have that. And if they do, I look at that, and those numbers tell me a story before I even go visit the team. Like, for instance, if the staff expenses are at like 40, so, or if because I've seen it before where it's that. And so, or, your dental supplies are maybe like 11-12%. And this is, let's say the practice is an $800,000 practice, not even $1 million, right? And so all of these expenses are extremely high. And let's say in this case, this doctor is negative. So then you meet the team, and you find that they don't really know, like, their roles aren't defined. You just have your front desk, and there's probably 2 people up front who are both, and just doing the same thing, confirming appointments at the same time, answering the phones at the same time. Like everything is like synonymous, or there's no defined role. And then you have, so the clinical team, they're just like, again, running back and forth. It's just a mess, right? So I just meet with a team individually with the knowledge of the P&L in my head. I already kind of have an idea. These people either aren't trained, there's probably a ton of overtime, or just wasting time, or they're back there on their phones and just not really aiding in the support of the business. So I meet with them, determine what their goals are, and determine why they joined the team, and where they think that it needs to happen and what needs to work, or whatever they think is the issue, why the doctor call you in, things of that sort. You'll find it's usually 50-50. Half of the people really want to grow, but there's no structure. So they're stuck. They're just like, I'm just here. And then you have people who could care less. This is just a job. They could care. They're coming or going. They really don't care. And so I always encourage a practice meeting after meeting everyone, trying to build relationships. This is within the week. I let everyone know who I am. I'm not going to make any changes. I am just strictly observing. The ultimate goal is growth, and the ultimate goal is your individual growth. I always start with the team individually, because if you bring it to the practice, it's like, what's in it for me, right? What am I here for? So my goal is, and I tell them my story, right? I started out, I didn't go to school for dentistry. I just started out front desk and just grew myself. And I tell them about the different opportunities and avenues. Clinical, you can come up front. You can front can transition to clinically. There's a growth path, but we just got to get there. So they're intrigued a little bit. It's not as scary for them. I'm not coming in to fire people. This person really at least wants to see me grow. Then I have a meeting and I explain to them, summary, just kind of areas of opportunity for the practice. And then we focus on some KPIs, which the ones that I typically focus on, just the generic net production, collections, accounts receivable total, and then over 90. And then I also reappointment, if there's hygienists, or whether there is or isn't, but reappointment rate, retention, and new patient conversion, because, and how many new patients they are. I generally start there with the team before everybody else. And then after this meeting, I meet back with them individually and we discuss growth paths, and I allow them to support me. I say, so we need a defined role. There needs to be someone to focus on the schedule, the production, and the collections. And sometimes they can be combined depending on the size of the practice. And then I tell them what success looks like in their role. So for instance, if you are the person that's managing the schedule and production, you're scheduled to goal. So whatever the goal set, you ensure that you're scheduled to goal each week, each day, and you're going into the next month at least 60% scheduled to the goal. We discuss like cancellation. I basically break down metrics for them and teach them that there's what these metrics look like give them percentages and benchmarks. That's what I was looking for. Give them benchmarks for these metrics so that they are able to follow it. So like if your schedule is falling apart, what does your confirmation policy look like? And do you have a cancellation policy, and is it being implemented? So most people who are in that role, a lot of them want to grow. So this is like tickling their ears. They're like, I want more, help me more. But then the ones who really don't want to be there, the ones who don't have the buy-in, like you mentioned, I identify what the missing link is. If there's resistance, or if they're trying to sabotage, they typically don't really want to be there. But if there's frustration, they just usually don't have the tools or the resources. So then I give them to them. I support them with that. But then I allow them to help me hone in and identify their role, and we create a role for them and give them, this is what success looks like. And then each week we connect, each month we revisit, and we share the growth in the practice and what they're doing and what their focus is on. We celebrate the wins, right? As it goes. And so, and a lot of the cases that works, a lot of the times people leave, but then we hire the right person in the right seat when that does happen.
Well,
that was a
sometimes,
lot I said.
No, you did, but what you said, for anybody who's not got systems in their practice, they go, I didn't realize dentistry can be so complicated in running a business, or not complicated, but complex. And the key word, and you said it right at the start, and you may have even said it before we started recording. The key word is systems. You've got to, and it's not just a list of processes, because processes that don't get done are pointless. you've got people have to be accountable and be kept accountable, and measure. Everything has to be measurable. And I love that you also measure conversions, and that's where I started back in pen and paper days.
Yeah.
The first coach that I had said, we need to keep a logbook of every phone call that comes into our practice. Everything. He said, that's a historic record of who calls about everything. It has to be written in this book. But at the end of every day, when the team went home, I looked and counted how many new patient inquiries did we have and how many of those got converted to a call, to an appointment. And I go, all right, so we've had 8 inquiries and 5 conversions. So that's 5 out of 8. That's 62%. That's all right. But 6 out of 8, which is only one more, is 75%. So it's like one more is an extra 12%. And they go, that's big numbers. One little number makes a big number. And so as I was mentioning to you, one of the things that I learned early was to also reward team members with measurements and achievements.
Yes.
And so we started to reward our front office team members individually on how many appointments they made for new patients. And they said, can't we do it together? I said, no. I said, I want you to be getting the phone first, or looking at the team. Go, are you going to get that? Will I get that? And because it makes them get a little bit faster. Not like, I watched that Formula One last night. Lando Norris, I tell you, he's coming second behind Oscar Piastri, and he says he's on the radio back to the pit saying, "You got to let me get past Oscar. He's not as fast as me. I want to win this." I'm going, hang on, and the pits are going, "Oscar's in front for a reason. You got to get past him for yourself." Anyway, but I don't, that's not the kind of team that we want. We want a team that works together well.
Yes,
and so it's important. And the thing is, there's a reason why when we weigh ourselves, we take our clothes off and usually have a big meal beforehand, because we want to measure that low number. All right.
Yes.
And so we want to be accurate. And when it's only that base of where that number is, and how are we improving against that base, and how are we beating that base. And so new patients is one of the easiest things to measure. New patient conversions is then a sum of that as well, because no point spending a bunch of money on marketing if you haven't got anywhere to put them.
Absolutely.
Or you're not filtering them, and you're not checking how much you're spending on different marketing to bring in different types of people. You can spend a big chunk of money getting people who just want relief of pain and that's see you later, or you could spend a big bunch of money on somebody who's a full mouth rehab or a 20 veneers case. So it's interesting, but I love how you. I think you're very lucky to come in at the DSO level and go, wow, this is really interesting, and then discover that the rest of the world. And I was thinking about this morning. Remember, you've heard it, that 95% of people when they get to the age of 65 don't have enough money to retire. They're either or they're dead or dead broke, as they say. And so that means only 1 in 20 succeeds. And I was thinking about that with team members. Sometimes it's 1 in 20 team members is the one that you want. Sometimes you just don't get the right team members. And so you said, 50-50 right from the start. And that's a tug of war happening before you even get there. So I love how you said that you frame it up that you're just here to observe and you're here to help them grow, because sometimes you said, sometimes they say, why do I have to do all this? How do you handle that when that happens? Do you find you can change them, or do you just have to move them on?
No, identify the why they think that, because I can't. There have been some difficult team members that I was able to, I wouldn't say necessarily change, just give them what they need. So, for instance, when people come in, like when consultants come in, and a lot of the times I'm at the practice level too, they're scared. They're just like, what is she going to come in and do? And when I notice I get a lot of friction or pushback, it's usually because I don't have the tools that they need to get the results that they're being asked, or they're not even being asked results. When I come in, I'm the one that's usually asking for the results. And that's when the resistance usually comes in, because it's like, you're not the doctor, you're not my boss, So that's why that team meeting is so important. The doctor stresses it. But the ones that I am able to get on the bus, I'll say, are the ones who see the value in this. They typically usually care about the doctor and they care about their job. They care about their team members. The ones that don't are the ones who are truly only in it for themselves. They don't care about the practice. They don't care about the team members. This is just a job for them, and they can go get the other one down the street. And it's easy to identify those quickly when you come in talking about growth, because lazy people don't want to grow, and that's why I go in initially after I do the one-on-ones, going into the growth paths and asking them questions about, like, what do you like to do? What's your favorite part of what you do when you come to the practice every day? Like, what gets you excited to determine, the numbers person or the relationships people person, with the patient. Or I love learning about what doctors doing with all of these all-on X's. Then you got your treatment coordinator who loves talking about treatment, but the one who doesn't and who's giving you the pushback and I'll continue to try, those are the ones that I find really quickly need to go. But then they usually coach themselves out because the people around them are changing and they're happy about it and they're growing. And then their peers are saying, hey, you either get on or you get off the bus, or if they're one who has heavy influence, because there have been office managers who you realize when I come in and they see all this growth in the office manager and they're like, oh my God, they've been keeping me down. Have you ever worked in those or coached a practice where the office manager did everything? The people up front answered the phone, but they handed the office manager everything. Oh, have a problem question? I'm going to give it to the office manager, or office manager enters checks. Office managers does all of the appeals in their practice. It's all the office manager. And when I come in, it's like, no, you should be able to do this. And I'm looking at the office manager like, free yourself. Don't you want to be able to take a vacation and not have the team call you a million times? So when that happens, either, some of the office managers either quit, which was what happened in the Ohio situation, or they jump on the bus. But I identify it quickly through those one-on-ones.
It's interesting. I was a dentist for 35 years, had my own practice in the same location for 28 of those years. When I left it was more than half my life in that one location. I haven't even lived in a home that long. And I thought, wow, this is really weird. And then I left it and went to work as an associate. And then I left that really quick because I was a crazy boss. And then I went and worked for a friend. And then I think I've gone the wrong shoulder, this shoulder. I had to have shoulder surgery. And then I found arthritis in my hands. During the recovery, I'm going, why are my thumbs sore? What's wrong with my thumb? And so I retired myself because I started dropping. I have to concentrate on picking things up, and there's certain things I can't do with my hands. But during that time of ownership, 35 years as dentist, 4 years of associateship before I bought, and 3 years at the end as an associate. But during that time that I owned and ran my own office, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 team members, maybe 4, that I was really proud of. I was able to develop them from having no idea what dentistry was about to be career dental people.
Yes.
One who could be to be a rep for one of the supply companies. And I thought that was great. And I chose her to come and work for me because she had a McDonald's job while she was at school. And I thought, well, McDonald's is systems. And this really helped. She was a bit wild working for me, but it's nice to still see her story. And then another one who came to me who could hardly speak English, had come from Eastern Europe, and she just said, "You'll give me this job." And I go, "Yeah, all right, I'll give you this job." And she said, and it was a front desk job so the accent was very thick, and I thought, there's something there. And she said, "By the way, I don't know how to use a computer." And I go, "Oh, that's all right. You'll learn. And if you don't learn, then you'll have to go somewhere else."
Yeah.
And she tells that story because the day she turned up, my wife was in the office and said, "David, she doesn't know how to use a computer." I said, "Yeah, she'll learn. And if she doesn't, we'll move her on." And she is now a coach in her own right in dentistry as a result of that. The people are there, and like we were talking, sometimes you've got to find the right people. And they can work. As you know, you started in the front office. You didn't really know, scrub instruments or how to evacuate saliva.
Nope.
Didn't matter.
But I've been thrown in the back.
It's interesting, but it's scary when you find offices that don't understand the percentage of what comes in has to go into different buckets. You've got to pay the dentist, you've got to pay the team, you've got to pay the overhead, you've got to have some profit, which you can reinvest as well. Part of it you reinvest, but if you've got $1 million office, you got to think, how am I getting money back on that $1 million that is invested in this office, because otherwise I should put it just in the stock market. I'd get money back. And they say, really, I've got to get money back on that as well. Yes, you've got to get money back on that. And some, as you know, they don't pay themselves even a salary.
No, they don't. And that's another thing. So talking to dentists, like you mentioned, a lot of dentists don't understand what EBITDA is, right? The idea of it. Profit to them is just net income is net income. But I always tell doctors, before I even try to explain it, net income just tells you basically how profitable you are, right? Just the money. But EBITDA tells you how efficient you are and how well your practice operates without you on the chair. So you need to understand how important that number is. Even if you're not interested in selling, always understand your value and always understand the efficiency aspect of it. Because when you're looking at it from that lens, like for instance, like if my staff expenses are high or have been higher this quarter, start asking yourself questions like, okay, is my team stagnant, right? Or are they growing? Are they developing? Are they actually being accountable to what they're doing? Like, do I have a team that has ownership in their roles, or are they just hot, warm bodies in the seat? Or your dental supply expenses, how are you managing your expenses? Are you ordering every time you need something, or do you truly have a system? Because there's an ordering, you should have a system for ordering supplies too. And so when I have these conversations with these doctors, and then I transition to who's the person that does the ordering on your team? Let's teach them a budget. Let's give them ownership of it, and let's teach them this system and make them the owner of it. I guarantee you, especially if this dental assistant or hygienist, whoever the person is, they understand this, they're going to monitor those supplies like a hawk, and they're going to manage your expenses like a hawk. If you teach them to inventory everything, order once or twice a month, right? To prevent out of cycle ordering, always know what you have and what you need for at least a 1 month, or depending on the size of your office, a 2-month supply. And then own it and then track it every month. This is your system. This is your baby. You will always be in line with your expenses and your overhead, and it won't go out of whack. Like this person will, and then have those good discussions with that person. Like, they should know, how am I doing? Where are we at with expenses this month? Like what percent of this is of your collections? And then just all the way from marketing to your office supply, all of those things. But the biggest thing you mentioned is when they're not paying themselves a salary. So then so let's say this $1 million practice and their EBITDA is like $400,000. Let's say they've mastered 60% overhead. They're good. And top line, but then they're like, oh, this is great. But then they haven't paid themselves anything. Oh, I'm just taking distributions from the practice. Well, we need to account for what we would pay someone to replace you, because no one's going to come in and, you're going to need to hire an associate at some point to get you out of the chair. And right now in the US, the average is like 35% of collections, which is what I would always recommend. And so we need to consider, of this revenue that you've collected, what percent did they generate? And then pay them 35% of that. And then that 400,000 quickly drops to like 250K. Then it's like, I see. So, but when they see that and look at it, it's like, okay. And so it just gives them a little more ownership as well, and their eyes are open. But yeah.
It's really important, because if they're not paying themselves a salary, that's where they've got to pay their school fees, their golf club fees, their holidays. Their 401k has to come out of that, not out of the office. The office stuff is for buying equipment, personal development.
Yes.
Yep. And you've got to have two separate parts. It's not just one big mess, and it can't be, because if you try and sell without a balance sheet, they'll come and they'll say, well, this business isn't actually making any money, because I've got to replace someone who's going to get 35%, and you're really only making 28%, and you're taking the rest out of the business's profit. So, yeah, it's to me, that was an eye opener. And I didn't really realize that when I ran my business, but when I sold and then ran my business for the corporate who bought it, I'm going, I've got these buckets I got to look after, and I actually made more money because I had this bucket that I was getting paid. I go, this is outrageous how much I'm paying myself now, because I'd just been taking a little bit and investing my salary back into the business, which is punishing my family for me having a business. And you've got to create a lifestyle, but it's got to be sellable, because heaven forbid. And the reason I sold at such a young age was because I had a friend who dropped dead at 58 from
Wow.
a cerebral aneurysm at lunchtime in his practice.
Oh,
And
wow.
when his wife was trying to sell the office, it was kind of like watching the TV show, The Price is Right. The price was going down
Oh,
every minute that she
goodness.
was talking to people because he wasn't
Yep.
there. And I thought, that's your biggest asset. That's a bigger asset than your home. And you can't. I've got to get myself away from owning that asset in case something happens to me. And
Yep.
heaven forbid it hasn't. But it just put my mind at ease to be able
Yes.
to distance myself from that.
Absolutely.
EBITDA is really, really important, and corporates rely on it so much when purchasing offices, but also they have to report back to owners and shareholders because
Mm-hmm.
EBITDA is important, but that's also how we value offices at multiples of EBITDA now.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
the book value of the dental office or the dental business or the dental corporate or the DSO is based on EBITDA. And so
Absolutely.
we've got to make that. The important thing, as you mentioned, and I'm going to pass it back to you, is getting the team invested in those results. And I might
Yes.
have touched on it. How are you? I don't know how corporates are, but I know small private dentists very happy. And this is something I learned in the US in my travels over there was pay your team bonuses on achievements. What
Yeah.
gets done and rewarded gets repeated and improved
Yes.
upon.
Yes. So quarterly growth bonuses it is always based off of collections, and it's a rolling month average. It's usually the most generic way that I typically do it in a practice. So what you mentioned too, so the schedule, let's say we're working with the schedule person, and we pay them off of new patients. Sometimes it's like $10 to $15. If you set your new patient goal to 14 from let's say you're averaging 14 and you want to do 20, we'll pay just that, or whoever scheduled that new patient and they convert, not just a new patient. And it's they have to at least convert and get on the schedule, pay them. But as the practice and the EBITDA grows, the doctor is going to share that percent of growth with the team, and 10 to 20%, depending on the practice. Let's just say 10% growth. It goes into a pool of money usually. And it's to be paid out quarterly according to the number of hours that each individual works in that quarter. And it's a rolling average. So and that's typically the best, and it usually increases our hours. They get one lump sum check that month, and then I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. So if your goal is 200,000 for the month and you increase it, and so let's say you do 225, that 25,000 is all in the bonus pool. And then if Doc has an agreement to share 10 of that 25,000, I don't have a calculator in math, but whatever that 10% is broken, trickle down to the team according to their number of hours worked within that pay period. So they typically get a bonus check. And then I always recommend that you guys, they create some kind of chart each quarter to track where we are each month and what we did to make it, not what we did to make it, but just kind of the thermometer thing or something like that, to make it fun. But in the interim, since the bonus is paid out quarterly, I always recommend like a $25 gift card when they make the goal for the month, because all of that money that they get over the goal goes into the bonus pool. So it's not like, yes, we made goal, but at least they feel like they've gotten something. So they get a $25 digital gift card or something each month for winning that, or if they want pizza or whatever they decide to do. But then the actual money happens the next quarter, and it's usually paid out the second paycheck of of that quarter. So like it'd be the second paycheck in January, the second paycheck in April, the second paycheck in July, because we want to reconcile right before we do anything to make sure that all of that money, all the collectibles are there, profit and loss, the EBITDA evaluation's done. So then by the second paycheck, we can pay out the bonus to the rest of the team.
It's complicated.
Was that too complicated?
Yeah, it does, but because you've got charts and so they can follow it,
Yes.
it's easy. Do you find though, and this is just a question off the top of my head, that because it's a 90-day measurement, that they give up if they're under at 60 days? They say, oh, we're not going to get there. It's like, I remember going to the Sydney Olympics when we had them in 2000. And one of the events I wanted to see was the marathon, the 42-kilometer, 26-mile run. And I wanted to see it. I wanted to go to a place where you could see them run past, because even when you watch it on TV, the cameras are usually in front or behind. And so you don't get that distance, the separation. So I went to a place where they ran past, and then they also 10, 15 minutes later, they ran back. Then I went to another place where they ran past, and then by accident, I was driving down a motorway, and the motorway that I was driving on was functioning, but the motorway coming this way, they were running on it. And I was going, there's some guys that I can see the Olympic Stadium, and these guys are almost there, and they're walking. And so that's what I wanted to avoid with paying bonuses. If you've got a long period and all of a sudden they go, we're under this month. We just get, or this quarter, we're just going to take it easy. Why strain to improve it if we're not going to get to goal? So I often find that the shorter the goal periods, you get more peaks,
more traction. Yeah. So we always make it attainable. Like there's nothing that's not going to be super,
Oh, good. So they'll always get something.
Well, they'll always get something. That's where the 20. Well, no. So let's say the $25 gift card or whatever the doctor agrees with. I'm just using the gift card for example. They get something for meeting their goal, but if they don't hit their goal that month, I always sound like because there have been times where they'll hit the goal one month, but then not the next month. But then maybe that month. The reason why we do it on a rolling average every quarter is because you're not going to hit your goal every single month. However, there's still a chance though to recoup it the following month because it's a 3-month time frame. And usually if there's an office where all 3 months no goal was met, we need to revisit the goal or we need to reevaluate the team. Just to make sure to see what's going on. So that also it tells me a story too. But typically, and because usually also if they're hitting it every month, every 3 months, is this goal too low? Like maybe, should we increase it a little bit? So there are months where you hit it, don't hit it, don't hit it, something of that sort. But when they do hit it, we reward them. And then I'm really straightforward with them too, because it's a valid question. It's like, because even team members are going to ask, what if we don't hit it this quarter, And like I just said, we'll revisit it, right? Or we'll determine the needs, because they have to have a sense of accountability too, right? So there are systems that we create to be followed. So like, are the handoffs happening? Like, what's the communication from the front to the back? Like, what's our case acceptance look like for this month? Is doc overdiagnosing, or is he just overcomplicating treatment in the back, and are patients understanding treatment when they come up? Like there are a lot of things to dig in, but when there's a bonus in place and when they realize that they're not getting it, the team starts to ask questions too. And then the team tells on the doctor to me a lot, like, well, every time they come up here, they never know what they need. So I can't talk about finances because they always have a question. Great. Perfect. So always, and bring the doctor back up or the dental assistant, because sometimes doctors are too smart for their own good. They're very, very smart and they use very smart words. So if the patient, and I always encourage, don't talk about money if they don't know what the treatment's not close in the back, can't talk about finances. So there's a lot of pivoting. And I'm sure you know this each month, whenever things are, if there's always a reason, right? So if we're not hitting goal, that's usually the team, an engaged team, is going to be the first person to say, I know why. It's because X, Y, Z and yada, yada, yada. But yeah, so.
You touched on a really good point there, and that's that communication is key. And whether we're talking dentistry or whether we're just talking anything, the communication can only be measured by the response of the person receiving that communication, not by the output of the person telling it. You can be the smartest person, but if this person isn't listening, doesn't understand, doesn't want to, goes over their head, doesn't matter how smart this person is, it's useless. And so we've got to go back to that. And you touched on it perfectly, the handoff, because if the dentist hasn't communicated it in the treatment room as to what the next step is and why we're going to do it, and what will happen if we don't do it in the time that he said, that's because dentistry, then you mentioned it earlier, maybe before we started recording, that dentistry just doesn't get better on its own. It's it always gets worse. And so we've got to create that urgency and concern, because the front office person can't say, you need to come back sooner. And they go, well, doc never said that.
Right.
The doc's got to say, so everybody's got to be speaking, singing from the same hymn book. And importantly, just like children, we got to tell patients more than once. Sometimes it doesn't sink in the first time. So although we said it in the treatment room, exactly 3 times at least, because the only thing that children really learn is what their school teacher tells them. Because how many times does it say, Mom, we got to do this because the school teacher said we got to do it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes,
yeah, but
absolutely.
we've got to communicate. And so I used to tell my team in my office and the teams I coach, every patient has to leave with clear next step. 3 words, clear
Mhm.
next step. What am I doing next?
Yes.
Don't
Yep.
give them a whole laundry list of dentistry. Just what
I
am I doing
know,
next?
and overwhelm them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it. It's just,
Yes.
just tell them how much it's ballpark. It's ballpark is going to be this. Well, next time we're going to do this, that you need to bring this much money. And now
Yes,
people don't bring money anyway. They just bring a card and tap. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
it's exciting. In terms of the offices, have you ever had offices where it's just like somebody wants it, but nobody wants it? Like even the doctor says, I need you to improve my office. And then you get there and even the doctor doesn't want it.
Yes. Yep.
Isn't that
Yes.
scary?
It is scary. And those are usually the offices that I like the doctor who knows he needs a consultant, hires all these consultants, but keeps going through consultants just because he needs to be the change, but he doesn't make the change. So those are the ones that are very short-lived partnerships. Honestly. But yes, I have worked with, and it's usually, in my experience, it's a doctor and a clinician duo. It's either the doctor and the hygienist who are set in their ways, or the doctor and a dental assistant who's been there with him for years that are set in their ways, and nothing else is going to change. But they know they need to change. But in those instances, I just stick to the facts, like I always do, the same way, right? Doc, what's your goal? What do you think needs to happen? Like, what do you need? Why am I here? Let's review the profit and loss report. I share it, we discuss it, and then I partner with the team. And again, in this instance, more than likely, the team will tell me. And like I had an example in Kansas City where I would partner with it, and then the front desk, she looks at me and she just laughs and she's like, "You're like the 5th consultant that's came in. He knows he's not going to change, but I'll go through this with you anyways." But and so, and then and she was ultimately right. We 4 to 6. I don't have like I'll ask for a 90-day at least for anything, because it takes 90 days to track a trend, and for anything to at least start to see a little bit of change. But in this case, it took 6 months, and there was nothing. And the team wanted to change. The team truly did, but it was the doctor and the dental assistant, and they wanted the change, but there was always a reason why they did it that way. Like there's a reason, well, but if I don't do this, then this isn't going to happen. And I'm like, well, trust your team. That's what I'm here for. Let me teach them. Let me help them. Let me grow them so that you can focus your areas on other things. Okay. Well, when I tried that, this didn't work. And so it's like, okay, doc. All right. Then I just pause and I just step back. How can I help you? And then we try to revisit the initial goal. And then ultimately some doctors just like to have a conversation and hear themselves talk and hear it worked out, but aren't good implementers and won't allow me to fully implement, or if I do implement, the assistant if someone complains, they don't want to lose their team member. And if they threaten to go, they're not going to push back. And I understand that, so, but you have to decide. I always let them know you have to decide what's more important, your current state where you're going to stay, or the growth that you see in your future. But where you are is not going to get you to where you need to be with this specific issue right here. And it's ultimately up to them to decide if they're ready to make that next step.
Yes. Sometimes there's the fear of change wins over the fear of growth.
Yeah.
Or this, and if you don't change, you just get overtaken by people who are improving. You fall behind. And ultimately, I got told by a general health doctor, a medical doctor, when he told me he was retiring and closing his office at age 65. I said, "Aren't you selling it?" He said, "No." He said, "I don't really have that many patients left." He said, "You practice, your patients age with you, and you don't replace them with young customers if they perceive you as being an old doctor." And he said, "So you end up with a shrinking office. So you've got to keep progressively being modern and
Yes.
and up to date to attract the young people." But even there's a point where they say, I'm not sure if that guy's really got sound hands to be working with me as a dentist, and so that's disappointing as well. How do we?
What's so interesting? Yeah.
No, you carry on. Yeah, tell me.
As you were thinking, what's so interesting is when that is the case, as that happens, finding the right associate or partner that is younger that you can mentor in your practice. And ideally, if you know you're going to transfer out, get them to buy in and then attract that market there, because there's a sense of comfort knowing that you have this new younger dentist. However, he's been mentored by the best, right? This doctor has been here for 30 years. He's ran the practice. So there's a sense of comfort in knowing that you're being trained and mentored and coached by the best. And it's a beautiful transition. And when you find the right partner, it's a beautiful dance, and it helps you with that transition. I've seen that a lot too when I was working with the company with the EBITDA. There were a lot of younger dentists who didn't want to go to DSOs, but they were too terrified to purchase a practice right away. Like it wasn't safe like it used to be back in the day to purchase a practice. So mentorship is more important. And I think that's also something that is lacking in the US for sure. Is true mentorship in dentistry.
You mentioned at the start, and thanks for reminding me, that you started working with big DSOs, and then you found that the churn of doctors in those offices
Yes.
was tough to work with. And so then you went to working and coaching, in small offices. Why is there a churn of doctors in DSOs? Are they just there to learn some clinical skills and then go and buy an office? Or are they just churning from one DSO to another DSO to another DSO? And are we creating a career of dentists now who never actually own their own office?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you think about it, you have these dentists coming out of school that have this mountain of debt, and it's guaranteed patients, guaranteed income, it's security, and in a sense it's growth, because a lot of these DSOs have huge CE budgets to support them and develop them. So you're a general, you want to learn implants, all on X is great. Well, and put that in your contract for the first year, grow you, because it's only going to grow their practice. So it's the support that they have behind them. It's the huge capital that they have, where they have that sense of security to pay off their debt, and they'll grow. But what happens is they get in and they realize, and they also promise mentorship too, because there's a lot of programs, and they're usually multiples, like in different states. So we have this group of dentists where you can help and learn from, but it doesn't usually always feel that way when you come in, because you come in and you're being worked. And you're going to work. And sometimes 10, 12 operatories, and you're one of two dentists with 4 hygienists, right? So it's busy, busy, busy. And then you have this office manager who's trained and taught to focus on the metrics, focus on the KPIs. Yes, develop your team, but there's not really an emphasis in team development. The emphasis is more so an increase in production, increase in collections. KPIs, making sure that you're scheduled to goal. Talk about this in huddle every day. And it gets exhausting. It is, because a doctor, he doesn't want to have these. Most dentists don't want to have these conversations. I don't care what our KPIs are. Tell me about my patient that's on the schedule. Tell me about what my schedule looks like for the day. So they come in, it sounds great. It's a shiny new tool. And then it's exhausting because they're pumped with production and KPIs and metrics. And then they are pushed to do well. And when they don't, there's going to be a conversation, and now there's a mentor doctor that wants to come help you and grow you because your practice isn't producing or performing. So that creates that revolving door. And then they either jump to another DSO, or they find a private practice and they start looking in the background because they're not happy.
It's interesting, as I grew in my own office, right, I was born with a disability. I'm left-handed, so I have to drill teeth left-handed. I have to work in a left-handed operatory. I can't just employ a right-hander, or I can't go and work in a right-handed office because everything's on the wrong side. It's inefficient, and it's also an occupational health and safety issue now. That when I went and worked for 3 years at the start of my career, I was working right-handed, tubes going everywhere. Every time I had to pull a tooth out, we had a fixed unit there. I had to pull the chair away from the unit so I could get in there to pull the tooth out on that side. So I had to learn to be efficient with my time as a left-hander, and not just put people where I had spaces, but I said to myself as an owner, all my team want is they want to earn the same amount of money every week so they can get a loan, rent a house, whatever, but they have predictability. But I don't even have that in my office, because one day I might have like all rats and mice, and other days I might have cosmetic work, and my income's like this. I said, can't I just do the same? And Shameika, it's as simple as just saying, if I drill a crown, then I should be gluing in somebody else's crown that day. I shouldn't be having a day where I glue in 6 crowns and another day where I
Yes.
drill and I don't glue any in.
Yes.
And so I balanced it all out. So, because I wanted the same as my staff. If I get out of bed, I want to make sure that I've earned this money for the day. And
Yep.
so, although I wasn't aware of what EBITDA was at that point, I did know that consistent production, plus
Yes.
it drives me nuts. One day I did 55 composite resin restorations in one day. It was like sitting there holding that curing light.
Oh my God.
I was exhausted. I just wanted
Smart.
to collapse in a pool of my own. It was horrible. And so
Yes.
having consistency, and so you touched on it, getting people to run the schedule and having say, this is where we're doing root canals, this is where we're
Yes.
doing crowns, this is where we're doing fillings, this is where we see our emergencies. And so every day was consistent. And if I set that benchmark of what I wanted each day, we nearly every day we were 20% over.
Yep.
And so it was, you go, oh, I've had a good day. Not, did I have a good day? It's like, I know I've had a good day because we've filled the template with what we want.
Yes.
And we can also bring people forward from one spot to another. And yeah, it's all about, we've come back to it again. It's about systems, processes, and being measurable. I used to walk in and I'd say, why have you got me here with doing a root canal in the second half hour of this appointment, or the second half hour of this day? Because every second half hour, I got to go and do a hygiene check. So I can't leave someone with a rubber dam on. What are they going to do?
In their mouth.
And talk to the dental assistant. So all rubber dam has to be done in the first half hour. It's just simple logic and processes. And when people follow that, then everybody enjoys the office. But if you've got people running their schedule and they can't even treat the doctor right,
they're just right.
Even racehorses get a holiday. They don't race 12 months a year. They get a time to rest. And so your doctor's day should be, your doctor's not he's not a plow horse. He's a racehorse, and you've got to look after him, treat him like a champion, and refresh. Even footballers get a half a year off to rest up and then regroup. Like it's amazing, and as I mentioned to you right at the start, we still don't have enough dental office coaches and consultants.
We
The
don't.
need
We
is out
don't.
there.
We
The
don't.
biggest tragedy I see in life is a dentist who hasn't realized the gift of owning a dental practice and what that can do to change their life and set their family up and their children up. Live where you want, send your children to school where you want, and have a good life, because they've not been told. So they're working on low numbers. They're discounting.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
And they end up broke. Dentists end up broke at 65 all the time. Omar Reed told me that, and I go, how is that? You've
That's
given
so
all
sad. If they only knew, like you mentioned, like with the schedule, and I have being busy does not necessarily mean you're profitable. Just, you should be able to, the best days is when you are scheduled root canal, crown, give the doctor an hour just to focus on that, have, your fillings towards the end of the day, or however the doctor prefers it. However, it's a $10,000 day with 6 things on doctor's schedule, and it feels like he or she did nothing, versus $3,000 a day. And like you mentioned, extractions, fillings, just bunch fillings and all of these things and emergencies. And it's like, we were so busy and didn't do much. But I think I always say, there are no more barbs up front, where the barb has worked with the dentist and she was 20, now she's 60, and she knows exactly what doctor wants and how to make the schedule, knows all the patients, knows how to chase every dollar that gets submitted to insurance from beginning to end. And that's her job. And that's what she loves to do. And all of the patients are part of the community. They come to the dentist and they trust doctor, and it's $1 million practice organically. It's not like that anymore because it's so heavy saturated with all of these DSOs and the competition and the insurance companies and the flyers, $59 for a new patient. So you have people that are shopping in dentistry versus just truly looking for a dentist, right? Or going for the patient experience. But that's the beauty in consultants. And when you find the right one, it's like, okay, well, let's hone in on your team, the type of patient that you want, and let's identify what makes you different and stand out from the 5 dentists that are on the same street that you are in. And let's capitalize on that and make the best experience and create fans and have them start referring, because Dr. Moffitt treated them so amazing and they could care less about who's in network with their insurance, because they know the person up front knows them, they know their money, they know what they're talking about, so they don't have any patient billing issues. And they're already always treated great in the back. The team has fun together and the atmosphere is so great. Like, let's duplicate that. And if you're in a consultant and you do that, and if dentists knew that, then that would encourage them to have a practice, because then my goal isn't for you to need me forever. My goal is for me to help you find a bomb office manager or practice administrator and have them do that for you and have them become your Barb of the practice. I just say Barb because that's one of the people that I've worked with in the past who was with the doctor, and everybody loved Barb. But have them become that for you, and then you have a business partner to help you. Because it is a career, like you mentioned before. It's an amazing career in dentistry, and there's always going to be a need, always.
There is. I think, and I was lecturing some dentists on the weekend, and I was telling them that, 28 years in one office, I saw patients and their children and then their children's children
So
in
beautiful.
that 28
Yeah.
years. And this relationship that we had, but you described my journey in that last little bit that you were talking. That was my journey. I hired a coach. The coach and I didn't get on. The second coach I hired had for 6 years, and I tripled my office turnover in 6 years. And when I hired them, people were saying, "You don't need a coach. You're already doing better than the average dentist." And I said, "No, I've got gaps in my book. I'm not working right." And this second coach, their philosophy was just this: David, we're going to love our patients to death. That's what we're going to do. We're going to love them to death. That's all we got to do. Make them want to come back. And that was the biggest change I thought in my career was having that coach and just getting systems and counting new patients, and also making sure that people were coming back for hygiene as well.
Yeah,
That,
absolutely.
again, that's like in running a real estate office. That's your rent roll. They're the people who love you. They're always there for you.
Yep.
Through thick and thin, they'll be there. Recession, they're always there. Shameika, this has been great. We could still talk for another hour. We've gone an hour. We could talk for another hour. This
was fun. Yes.
Yeah. I'm so glad we got to connect. Shameika, if somebody's watching this or listening to this, what's the best way for them to find you if they want to talk to you and maybe have them come to visit and work with them at their office?
Absolutely. So 2 ways. I always give my cell phone number. You can call me, 314-448-0716. But also as well, you can find me, email me, which is Affluent. My company is Affluent Dental Consulting. But the email is Affluent, AFLUENT, Dental, DENTAL, SVC, service, SVC, @gmail.com. Or you can just reach out on LinkedIn. It's just Shameika Henderson.
All right, gotcha. And that's how I found you. And that's an easy way to find you.
Yeah.
Well, Shameika,
I'm always active there.
Excellent. Thanks so much for being a great guest today on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. It's been great having you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.